We tend to think of ourselves as the finished product, this highly intelligent and technologically developed being that's separate from any forces of evolution. But are we really done evolving, or are we still changing in ways that we don't even understand and recognize? Now, in today's video, we'll be looking at evidence that suggests that human evolution is still happening to this day. But before we do that, let's take a step back and look at how we even got here, how Homo sapiens even came to be. Now, we're going to do a quick overview of the timeline here. Around 55 million years ago, the first primitive primates have evolved. Around 8 to 6 million years ago, gorillas first make their appearance. Fast forward to 5.8 million years ago, bipedalism is introduced. Now, bipedalism is characterized as being able to walk on two legs. Around 3.2 million years ago then, in what is now Ethiopia, a species that we're quite familiar with has evolved. This is the Australopithecus afarensis. And one of the most famous specimens of the species was found in Hadar, Ethiopia, and it was named Lucy by the archaeologists. Fast forward to 2.8 to 2.75 million years ago, we see that the genus Homo, or more commonly known as the human genus represented by a lower jaw with teeth, first appeared in the Afar region of Ethiopia. Now, it's suspected that the specific species under this genus was the Homo habilis. Now, something worth noting here is that from around this point, the hominids began to use stone tools frequently made by splitting pebbles. So from this point on, they tend to use stone tools. Now, this breakthrough accelerates hunting and it boosts meat consumption, which then in turn increases the energy levels that are available and allows hominids to develop larger brains. So this leads to a general increase in hunting, more meat, and thus more boosted energy levels and an increase in brain size. But on the other hand, by diverting energy from the biceps to the neurons in the process of developing the brains, the muscles generally had atrophied. To know more specifically about this, I suggest that you read the chapter The Cost of Thinking from the Sapiens book. Now, from then on, the species under the Homo genus that we may perhaps be more familiar with start to appear. The Homo ergaster in Africa around 2 million years ago tend to appear, and the Homo erectus, primarily found in Asia around 1.8 to 1.5 million years ago, tend to appear. And of course, the Homo neanderthals by around 230,000 years ago are found across Europe all the way to around from Britain. And then around 195,000 years ago, modern humans, also known as the Homo sapiens, first make their appearance. Now, one thing that's very important to note is that the evolution of these species didn't just happen in isolation. The timelines in which they existed overlaps, and you'll see what I mean when you look at this diagram right here. For instance, the time in which the Homo sapiens exists kind of overlaps with the time in which the Homo neanderthals existed. We see that there is a general period of overlap here, and this raises a major question. Why did only the Homo sapiens species survive from these times of overlap? Now, there are mainly two compelling theories that tend to explain what could have happened in this period, and this is the interbreeding theory and the replacement theory. Now, to know more about them in detail, I again strongly recommend that you refer to the Sapiens book, but in this video, I'll just give you a concise overview. Now, the interbreeding theory states that when the sapiens spread into the Neanderthals' lands, they bred with the Neanderthals until the two populations essentially merged. Now, according to research, the Neanderthals are primarily residing in Europe and Asia at this point of overlap. So, in the case of Neanderthals, they're primarily residing in Europe and Asia. Now, this may be evidence, and the fact that these Homo sapiens actually migrated towards Europe and Asia and bred with Neanderthals might actually be evidence of how today's Eurasians may not exactly be pure sapien species. They may be a mixture of the sapiens and the Neanderthal species. On the same line, when the Homo sapiens species reached East Asia, it is believed that they interbred with erectus species who were believed to have resided there. So erectus, they mainly resided in East Asia. And if they were to have interbred, this would likely mean that the Chinese and Koreans of today are a mixture of the sapiens and the erectus. Now, very different from the interbreeding theory, the replacement theory states that due to the anatomical differences between the species and the others, between one species and the other species, as well as the difference in their body odors or even their mating habits, they wouldn't have been able to get any sexual interest towards each other. And also, the genetic gulf between the two species would have likely been too big to produce a fertile offspring. So it kind of rebuts the interbreeding theory by saying that due to the anatomical differences that arise between the two species, and also because of their different body odors and mating habits, as well as the genetic gulf that exists between them, this theory of interbreeding would have been impossible. Interbreeding itself would have been impossible as their offspring would not have been fertile. This would mean that the modern humans are all pure sapiens, as it means that other species have essentially been ruled out in this period of overlap, and only the sapient species had essentially survived.